It's time to enhance the relationship between expertise and impact, between knowledge and application. Welcome to a journey of discovery and empowerment. Welcome to All Physicians Lead, the Forbes Books podcast that highlights the critical leadership role that all practicing physicians take on every day. Here's Dr. Leon Morse.
Welcome back. I'm continuing my conversation with Dr. Maria Granzotti. We've been discussing her distinguished career as a physician executive, extensive leadership experience in healthcare, and strong foundation in emergency medicine. Maria, let's dive a bit deeper into leadership. Share a couple of moments in your career, something that surprised you, challenged you, redirected your path, and maybe made you think, hey, this is an opportunity to make a difference.
When I saw the inefficiencies after 20 years in the ER, it was just pounding me in the head. There is so much opportunity on the quality and safety front. And I had I think, a unique perspective too in the ER because I did an internal medicine residency. Although I'm boarded in internal medicine and ER medicine and administrative medicine, I'm kind of sick that way. I took the first administrative boards.
Lifelong student.
Yeah, exactly. But I could see that parlay to in-house and kind of the trajectory. So the folks I worked with, the physician, attending physicians who admitted, et cetera, always appreciated my perspective and that kind of forethought of what needed to happen next and what was going to happen. And I just think that gave me a lens on the quality and safety front, just really helped me. And I think I also saw physicians who just didn't, who were not interested in leadership, and that everybody has their own, path, has their own passion, what they want to do and what they want to focus on. But there was a real gap into how the administrative operative, I should say, pieces of a hospital, a clinic, a department, however you want to slice and dice it, actually worked. So that I just saw opportunity there in how can I relay this and make this smoother? Not that we're going to like everything, not that we're going to agree with everything, but how can we better make this a team effort in the delivery? And it's funny because I had a cardiologist once, and I was walking out from my first CMO role I'd been there several months, but, typical Friday, 5:00, 5:30, did you hear? And, that's the dreadful, did you hear? And he said, I don't know how you're doing this. He said, but you're making huge changes, but you're not pissing everybody off. And that was one of my best compliments that, because you have to be tough when you have to be tough. You have to turn the volume up when you need to. But then you also, to get across that you're listening. And I think as physician leaders, we all need to continually work on that because sometimes we don't listen as well as we need to. But that was a real moment. And that continued my passion for what I was doing.
Yeah, over and over again, people hear me talk about listening as a critical skill for leaders. And I will quote over and over again that, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And
yeah. I probably needed to hear that more myself at certain points in my career, but yeah, no, I agree.
I think we all do. So you were pretty involved in the COVID response in one of your roles, if I heard correctly on that. Tell us about that. I mean, we all have a pretty vivid memory of probably some of the things that happened, but what did you see? What did you see on your teams? How did that bring everybody together, tear everybody apart? What lessons did you learn?
Yeah, it really, to raise the stress level is to put it very lightly. But I think we had people get very creative as to how to staff, provide product. I think the collaboration level, I was with the National Health Organization at the time, and, what we worked on in our market versus what we were working on nationally, that just got that much tighter and different approach. And I think we really got to solutions somewhat faster to address certain issues just because we had all hands on deck, working on it rather than a few here or there. The hardest thing, I think, and I can remember going to the ER to be a greeter, we did not have staffing. It was very difficult to staff in these new roles that we really felt we had to have, whether it was greeting and triaging from the front end versus the back end. But that was a really, really interesting time. The amount of unknowns, and as you know, across the country, we had people just decide, you know what, I'm not in healthcare anymore. This is too high of a risk for me. And then those that stayed, and actually it was very interesting from a psychosocial standpoint, those that were, you know what, I'm diving in, I'm going in. So it was just very interesting perspective. And then some things that you thought were everyday have tos really fell off the wayside, you know? And even from a data perspective, what we were having to report to the state and how to gather that data, and then for it to be correct and very up to date, if not on an hour to hour internally, but on a 24-hour for the state, was very interesting how to gather that. And we had, in some pockets, we had to have more people doing those types of information gathering than we'd ever had before. The role of displacement, you could have a clinic nurse who's now doing something totally different, but familiar enough with the data to be able to make sense of what she needed to report on. So,
Yeah, I share a lot of that, the flexibility of our team members to just pitch in and, put the shoulder to the wheel and say, okay, this needs to get done. I'll figure it out and do it was remarkable. So,
yeah.
formative time for a lot of folks. So it may not be possible to separate these in this kind of way, but I'll ask a question about your career in clinical medicine and senior administrative roles, quality and safety. When you look at where you are now as a leader, those are all a part of it. How did each of those shape what you've become, where you're headed, your vision for the future, as your chief nurse said years ago? What's next for you, and how did those build to that?
Yeah, I will say, I've always told my children, anything you do, think of it as layering and potentially. You never know when you're going to use it. You never know when you're going to pull from that skill set. So I've always told them, keep diversified. You can keep focusing what you're doing, but be open to different avenues, and just stay flexible and diversified in what you can do. It actually, it's given me a different lens at this point in my life as a consultant, as an advisor, as it's exciting to see, okay, what's next? Where can I take these skill sets and either add to them, or take my extensive experience and apply it in a new way, and potentially, even if it's a different industry, I don't know. I don't know. I'm keeping it open to, all this experience. How can it impact further, in the next space? I know, I don't know if that's the right answer, Leon, but at least that's the answer I have. Yeah.
No, that's good. And with all the things you've done, if somebody's listening to this and say, "Oh, well, I'll keep an open mind, do a good job, and then things will come before me, and I can make some decisions about whether to engage." In that concept, how important is passion? You look at folks, and maybe they're just feeling like they're in the grind, a cog in the wheel kind of thing. If you have it, how does it impact your engagement and willingness to go the extra mile? And if you're losing it as a clinician in particular, or as a healthcare administrator, and I don't know if you've experienced those sort of lulls, how do you
Mhm.
get it back? Because I think it really drives your willingness to work hard and stay the course, even amongst the obstacles that get thrown in front of you.
Yeah, I think as physicians, we are so understanding of the grind it takes. If we and I've always thought, if we didn't have passion for medicine itself, we wouldn't be in this business. You cannot be an excellent physician I don't care what kind of physician you are, without the passion to be a physician in the first place, how you define as an individual what your delivery, what your relationship, what how you're gonna apply your passion in medicine. Yeah, there are times when we're like, "Oh my gosh, another ER shift. Oh my gosh, another call shift." But you have to be able to somehow tease out, and it sounds rough, but you have to be able to somehow find that passion or find the aspect in that call, in that ER shift that's gonna have you consistently deliver what you intended to be. Okay, what you intended what that looks like for you. For some, it's, it's location, it's volume, it's space, it's for some, it's, what? I can find my passion again if I can get involved in, medical staff privileging. I know that sounds really boring to the majority of people, but maybe that's a space where, gosh, that learning, that continual learning can come back, and who knows, maybe that impacts your practice that much more. Maybe that makes you better as a clinician. But I think that home base of why everyone has their individual reason of why they became a physician, and how you can continue to generate that and apply that. And it always helps. I am stubborn as hell. My grandmother, farm wife, was
Grandma
stubborn.
drove that into you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I have to, and I think that stubbornness is actually, served me well the majority of the time.
That's fabulous. So when we look at how complex healthcare is, and it's not going to simplify, right? I mean, when we started, it seemed complex, but I don't think I didn't at least have any idea how many layers were going to be added on in my career. So projecting that forward, you've got folks that are listening that are just starting their leadership journey or are looking at beginning. Advice for young physicians who want to become healthcare leaders. What do you see as the big challenges for them, and getting involved, moving forward? What's your crystal ball say about the big healthcare challenges coming up?
I think the big challenges, for physician leaders, and again, I think physician leaders are gonna be in a better place to understand this, is engagement of the workforce, okay? And I'm talking at all levels, not just physician. You have to have a real understanding of the nursing workforce and shortages therein. So that's gonna be a huge challenge for physician leaders on how they engage further and how they can build further efficiencies in care delivery. We're only gonna have so many people to provide care. With the other challenge too is to really keep abreast of, M&As are gonna continue, right? Some of the profit margins of entities have gotten a little stabilized, have gotten a little better, but we still have, a lot of our rural hospitals and clinics that are struggling. So how you balance, you have to ethically know where do you want to provide the biggest focus, or where do you see that need that's gonna provide you some further purpose. You don't wanna get it diluted by the financial bottom dollar. For you, the reason you went into medicine, you have to understand, why did I go into medicine and what kind of an impact do I wanna make? It's engagement, it's gonna be workforce, and also, frankly, aging population and the chronicity of diseases, how we're gonna address that. And it's not a moment. I know that the physician and the clinician force is not, we can't just hold our hands up. We have to understand and continue to work together in order to address these needs.
So that's a very good point. Bring us some practical examples. We're talking about balancing the needs of the patient, clinical output, if you will, quality versus the demands of the business and the operating margin and investment in future facilities and
Mhm,
rehabbing existing facilities.
mhm.
There's a lot of tension that can occur in healthcare systems between those two poles. Any specific examples that you have, or general concepts for folks on how to balance the two of those, the business and clinical medicine?
Yeah, I've always felt that when you do the right thing for the patient, it's gonna add value itself, right? When you focus on the safety, when you focus on the quality, when you focus on the appropriateness of care, align those with your core responsibilities and core capabilities, it's gonna take care of itself.
So, some of the biggest movements that you've initiated, led, been part of a big team in terms of quality over the years. Tell us about some of the things you got really excited about, and what's the next step in those if there's someone coming up and going, "Oh boy, I really got excited about what she said she did, and here's the next level in that domain."
Gosh, there's a lot. When I was in the age, again, I'm going to date myself, but when all of the pay for performance and value-based care and the core measures really started ramping up and what you needed to address, I would get really excited. I think at my core, the most exciting thing I did was to get teams together to determine the most appropriate evidence-based protocols for specific disease states. So let's say, because I was able to integrate, okay, here's the clinical care with how we operationally address this care. And we have to be able to scale it at times. So sepsis was one that we had some really good results on.
Yeah.
How we, decreasing mortality with that. And then the other was, and everybody's going to be again very bored, but length of stay, and it's a matter of looking at your in-house population and saying what's our LOS outliers, and where can we potentially make an impact for that, and teams getting together and understanding, oh, if we would have gotten respiratory care in here a little earlier, or if we would have gotten PT in here a little earlier, you can make some really, and you just have to chip away. You can't go in expecting I'm going to take away 5 days and I'm going to make a $500 million return on this. You have to just continually chip away, because guess what? When you chip away at one, it gives you the visibility and the lens into other similar but different issues, and you can be really efficient with what you can apply to make them all rise, all do great. It's not easy. It's not easy because, you have various teams, but that teamwork component is so critical. I'm a huge student of high reliability, huge student of high reliability, have taught it, and that and you allude to it with the people that are on the front lines, knowing what's going on, that sensitivity to operations and that deference to expertise. You've got to keep those principles in mind when you're looking at any issue that you're dealing with.
I'm going to throw something out here that's in my current wheelhouse about the definition of physician leadership, and we've talked a lot about leadership in the common vernacular, which means a physician who's now has a named position in the organizational chart, and so now you need to get an MBA or a doctorate in leadership, and now you're a leader. My current take on this is that if you look at influencing behavior to achieve a desired result as a fundamental definition of leadership, then every doctor is doing that every day. And since you just brought up the idea that the frontline leaders, the frontline managers, if you will, there's tons of data that shows that when you're closer to, either in our business, the point of care or the point of production, those managers really impact team performance, error rates,
Yeah.
team member experience. And what do you think about that as a general concept? We're trying to push with All Physicians Lead to get every doctor to recognize that they're a leader. And from your quality and safety lens in particular, or a senior leader lens, if all doctors said, "Oh my gosh, I have impact, I make a difference here. I'm not always the boss, but my actions matter." How does that play out in your experience?
Absolutely. Every single person on that floor is a leader, is the
Mhm.
way I look at it. Not just the physician, it's also the nursing, it's also the techs, it's also house cleaning, it's housekeeping, et cetera. Every single person has that ability to lead in how they practice their craft, and it's noticed. But what people I think forget lots of times is that the whole point of physician leadership, it's not to be top down. is to be influential and collaborative because it's all interactive. It's all relational. The moment it becomes a top down, that's where you have a lot more problems. So no, I absolutely ascribe to that. Everyone has the potential and can be a leader in the way they apply their craft.
Yeah, and I love that statement. I mean, when I'm in the operating room, the circulating nurse, the tech, the anesthesiologist, everybody's influencing behavior to achieve the result of taking care of that patient in the
Mhm.
best way that we can together. So leadership doesn't, as you said, mean, I'm the boss of you. Rather, it means I'm listening twice as hard because I recognize the impact that I had. Our initials are APL, which started with all physicians lead, but it's really all professionals lead, but it's really all people lead,
Yeah,
right?
no,
So
exactly. And when you think about it, one of the first things you do if you do have a safety event, unfortunate event that you have to assess, one of the first things you should be asking is what was going on in the environment? What was going on? And that tells you that interaction, that milieu that can really impact.
yeah, and one of the great examples of that is, you're running a code and the new X-ray tech comes in and is obviously a little bit nervous, and the code team leader is, hollering at them, and, they drop the film plate back when we had film plates, and,
Mhm, mhm.
and it chips and they have to go get another one, and that all is based on that leadership encounter that makes a difference in team performance, error rates, and ultimately
Yeah,
patient outcomes.
and you just reminded me of at the end of every single code I ever ran for years, right? I'm not gonna say how many again, but oh,
I don't
for
like
some
doing that math either, so I
at
know you.
the end, I was always anyone in on this team, anyone, participating in the code, does anyone have an issue if we were at the point to end the code? And I didn't care who you were.
Yeah.
Bring up your issue. Yeah. So thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah.
No, that's great, and brings you back to those bedside days, right?
Yes,
That's
yes,
awesome.
yes, yes.
Makes us smile though, right? It makes us smile a bit.
Yes, yes.
So you've worked in a bunch of different systems, healthcare directly, healthcare indirectly, different leadership roles. When we talk about implementing change, whether it's quality, safety, physician leadership development, you name it, culture plays into that. How accepting of change management are different organizations. What are some of the disparate cultural characteristics that, and yeah, I won't ask you to name names, that you've experienced, and what are the commonalities across all the different organizations that you've worked in?
Yeah, and I'll start with I love the concept of a just culture. I mean, I saw, oh my gosh, the spectrum, and it depended on whether I was on a hospital floor, whether I was in a boardroom, frankly, whether I was in the, emergency department in the radiology suite, whatever it was. I would say I saw all across the spectrum from age old, this is the way we've always done it. We're never changing and we don't know why and we don't understand why and it doesn't matter what anybody says about it to okay, we have to address that. That was the impetus for okay, we have to address that to get to where we need to be. So, but regardless of the spectrum, you really have to, because physician leaders will get this and clinicians will get this. You really have to understand the situation you're in and the team you're in front of and the group you're in front of because your approach may be a little different talking to an ER department full of providers versus
A group of
you
neurosurgeons.
yeah, exactly, a group of neurosurgeons
I'll
or a
throw out
group of
that for fun.
we could get going, or a group of orthopods or yeah, 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 we could totally. But, yeah, I mean, you really have to it's almost that emotional intelligence to understand where people are coming from, and it gets back to that listening. If changes needs to be made, you have to listen that much more into how to implement that change. And some folks are just gonna be faster adopters than others. Some folks have to see the proof in the pudding before they're gonna move in any direction. But I think that is really a key point across because 'cause you're gonna be all over the place on culture, but how you can get more to a solid culture, is just gonna take that much more listening.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So in light of that, you talked about some challenges in the abstract. Specifics, again, no, you don't have to name names, but think of one or two of the most challenging leadership positions, decisions, environments that you've been in. How did you work through that? What did you learn? How did your experiences prior to that prepare you for that very challenging experience?
Yeah, and it's interesting because this was very early on, in my CMO roles. There was a pretty much a conflict or a territorial, and I'm sure you've never seen this, Leon, but a territorial aspect between vascular and intravascular. The intravascular practice was growing in radiology versus a vascular surgeon space, and it was all around who's going to have the rights or the privileges? What training are we going to need in credentialing for these two entities? So I learned so much between bringing them both to the table because it could have been very divisive. Um, you know, because then the general surgeons get involved and then the radiology gets involved but we actually were able to come to a common understanding of privileges and what it took to get to those privileges so that both could practice in that space. And to talk of it now, I'm like, I don't know how I even, but it's not just me, it took talking and having those relationships with those intravascular and vascular entities and surgical and radiological to understand, what, we're just trying to get to the best place to deliver the best care. And that goes back to that. If you take care of the quality and safety first, it's going to take care of itself.
Yeah, ultimately, very, very different lenses that, different providers have, different specialties have. And so sometimes when you say, hey, what's the best thing for the patient? They don't necessarily come to the same answer. Ultimately, the outcome is a healthy patient.
Right.
But what's your experience throwing out what's best for the patient and getting like two diametrically opposed paths and reconciling that?
Yeah, lots of times they're maybe saying the same thing, but saying it in a different way, that they swear they have a different perspective. So it's just finding that commonality and saying, okay, you're both saying the same thing. Honestly, you're both saying the same thing. Now, there may be a couple different steps in there, but it's just kind of being the glue and being the balancer in that perspective.
So folks who are listening to this and say, I want to be like her when I grow up.
Boy, that's scary,
What
people.
do you? I think they'll be well served. They'll be
Yeah.
well
Oh,
served.
thank you.
Advice that you have to say, this is how you should look at professional growth for several decades. Maybe some of the lessons that you learned that you might do differently. Some of the things that you did that were just super impactful and positive that you would recommend that people replicate.
Yeah, there's a lot that we do that don't let fear or gosh, I'm not good enough or gosh, I could never do that. That's the first time you should actually, if you're interested in it and really could see yourself applying it at some stage in your life, do it. Do it. You're strong enough to be a physician. You're certainly, and I'm not saying that in an elitist way. The continual learner side of us is really a special blessing. It's really a special gift. So don't let fear or time or just really think about the unknown benefits. Lots of times it's not just the certification, not just the MBA after your name. It's like really keep open as to what I can this skill set, how can that benefit me and how I can help others with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned before, you never know when something that you've learned is going to be applicable. And one of the things that I will tell the residents is that I learned a very amateur rock climbing aficionado for a while. And, if you're really good at upper body strength, you'll claw your way through this and, do a lot of chin ups in the gym when in reality, your footwork is terrible. And
Mhm.
so if you're already at the 90th percentile with upper body work and the 15th percentile at footwork, it's a lot more fun to keep working that upper body because you're just really good
Sure.
at it. It's a show-offy move, right? But look at some of the things that you don't know. That 15th percentile can go to 50th with your footwork very easily. So here's a lesson in, how to climb rocks that is super applicable to how to be a better surgeon or how to be a better doctor or how to be a better leader. Find that there's a whole literature out there that says, stay with your strengths, know your strengths and work on your strengths. Well, if your weaknesses are impeding some of that forward motion,
Yes.
then you'll get a lot more bang for your buck working on some of those, right?
And you bring to mind a word that I try to use every day in my life. Be humble enough. Be humble enough to know, hey, this, maybe the way I'm doing it is not the end all of how to do this. So I need to continue to look at, just be open and be that flexible. And it's easy to say, be flexible, but you've got to be humble enough to know that, you know what, I'm not the end all be all. I've got to continue to grow. And how can I bring my blessings that much better?
Yeah, be curious, right? I don't know if you're a Ted Lasso fan, but that scene where he's throwing darts is a classic leadership book right there. Great case study. So we talked about a few of them. Maybe expand on a little bit longer list. Emerging healthcare leaders. What are some of the critical skills? We talked a lot about listening, which I, would put at or very near the top. Other skills that you think are really super important for the folks that are going to be leading healthcare after you and I are retired?
I think it's important to bring your humanness. I think it's very important to bring your humanness to interactions and leadership. I think that really optimizes what people are bringing to the table and also differentiates you. It differentiates you in how you're stepping up to the plate. Humbleness, we talked about humility. If I had to think, I think it's something that I didn't ever recognize as much as I possibly should have because I always thought I wasn't, but creativity. Creativity is a very, very important piece of the puzzle. I mean, we all need more as physicians. We all need more financial acumen. We all need more, operational acumen. But that creativity piece just kind of feeds into that. And you really have to be able to speak clearly with folks. Speak your mind. When people start playing kind of a shell game on what they're trying to get across because they don't know what they're trying to get across or are afraid to try to get across, be honest, step up to the plate. Speak clearly. I really think that teams appreciate clarity a lot more than we recognize.
Yeah, and can handle it, right? They're all in a really tough business too, so they're more resilient and tougher than we might give them credit for. You don't have to soft play the bad news or the tough
Right.
news. So good for you.
Right.
Well,
Right.
listen, this is absolutely awesome. We're coming up on time. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and really great insights. We're all looking forward to what you do with the next couple decades. So keep us posted.
Yeah, keep it going. I'm still skiing. I'm still playing tennis. I'm still going to spin class. So there you go. I have to use it somewhere.
All right. Well, take care. Thanks again, and appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Leon. I really appreciate it.
And that will do it for another episode of All Physicians Lead. If you like the show, please take a moment to subscribe so we can notify you about new episodes. In addition, please leave us a review so others can benefit from the leadership insights of our terrific guests. See you next time as we continue redefining physician leadership.
This has been All Physicians Lead. We can all be better leaders, and our teammates and patients will be the beneficiaries. Go to allphysicianslead.com to unlock your potential, sharpen your impact, and elevate your journey. All Physicians Lead with Dr. Leon Morse is a production of Forbes Books.